The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster, my good afternoon. We're on Mannin Line today. Open line through till 1, so the floor is yours. Whatever you want to talk about, then by all means do get in touch. Call 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp 166 177. Email studio@manxradio.com. Following on from the news of the tides, a number of sailings this week have been rescheduled due to tidal conditions in Douglas Harbour. And the fact that the mud's still there. This morning's 8 o'clock to Heysham went at 7:45. The 1:45 departure from Heysham now leaves at 1:15. The 7:15 departure from Douglas tonight goes at 6:30. Tomorrow morning's 1:45 service from Heysham to Douglas departs at 1:30. The 8 a.m. departure from the Isle of Man tomorrow goes at 7:30. Tuesday's 1:45 from Heysham to Douglas goes at 1:30, and the 7:15 Douglas to Heysham goes at 7 o'clock. And we don't know whether Norma's coming back soon to get rid of all the mud, but we'll find out. As soon as we do, then we will. 5 years ago today, the start of the coronavirus pandemic on the Isle of Man. Can you remember that? It's like a separate world, isn't it now? Like a parallel universe. If you've got any thoughts on it, we'll hear from some of the decision makers at the time fairly shortly. But if you've got any thoughts on the coronavirus pandemic, and of course if it affected you personally, and particularly if anybody you know sadly lost their life, obviously all our sympathies go out. But you heard in the news that Mr. Quayle at the time, Howard Quayle, said they were predicting 2,000 people dead on the Isle of Man because of coronavirus. Well, happily, thankfully, far fewer than that. Anyway, thoughts on it? Just if you can reflect on coronavirus, then by all means do. And first of all, Peter's with us today. Hi, Peter.
Oh, hello, Andy. It's Peter Murcott here. No, I do not wish to reflect upon the virus. That one is past. I want to reflect about the future and what I've been ringing in about the safe access zones.
Yes.
Now, as you know, we've had some public meetings around the island, and you kindly mentioned two of them last week. We've actually got another one in Ramsey on Tuesday at Our Lady Star of the Sea Catholic Church at 7 o'clock, if anybody wants to come along. And what has happened, what came out of one of the public meetings that we had was a discussion about the way in which private members' bills are introduced in the first place. Now, I'll tell you where this came from. At the very sensible suggestion from Stephen Moore, who quite often rings into Mannin Line, he suggested to me, why don't you do a comparison between the UK law on safe access zones and the Isle of Man? And a very good suggestion it was, because they are substantially different in that in the UK they only relate to abortion. Now, we've already got standby legislation from 2018 about that. They do not cover the situations that the one that's proposed in the Isle of Man does. And, of course, they're nowhere near as draconian as the law in the Isle of Man. Now, what this calls into question, and we had quite a discussion at the end of one that a meeting Julie Edge had organised, was about when private members' bills are first introduced. You have the person who wishes to introduce it puts the case, and then the Keys vote on it. Now, what we're getting from this is really that is not enough. What needs to happen, because the Keys don't really necessarily know exactly what they're voting for, what ought to happen is when a person wishes to introduce a private member's bill, before the Keys decide whether they're going to give leave, they ought to have a special committee perhaps called the Private Members' Bills Committee or something like that, which would look closely into whether it was justified to introduce this and what exactly it entails, and indeed what exactly the UK law is like. Now, we're finding this out after the event when the bill has reached past the second reading stage, and that is really getting late in the day. And so I thought that was an eminently wise suggestion, and I think it would save some of the trouble that we've already had on this bill.
So why do you think, what would be the motivation for making the bill here far more widespread than the one in the UK?
Well, that I don't know. I really don't know. And I must admit, when I came to look at the UK law, and it's to be found in the Public Order Act 2023, it isn't even actually a separate piece of law. It's in the Public Order Act, Section 9. And the first thing I noticed was that it certainly wasn't to do with the raft of issues that we've got here. It was very issue specific. And the second thing I noticed was that the penalties are not so draconian. It doesn't have imprisonment in. And the third thing is about it that there are certain exclusions which don't apply in the Manx Bill. For example, church premises are excluded. They're not excluded in the Manx Bill. And there are a number of differences. And what I've done, I prepared a booklet which I'm disseminating, and I'm going to send to the House of Keys, on 11 areas where you've got differences. And certainly, it's not as draconian. It doesn't have, for example, the potentiality of extending the zones to an unlimited extent. They're 150 metres, and there's no power to extend them. Now, the Isle of Man, someone has commented, is about 1/80th the size of England and Wales. And yet, you've got far more extended possibilities in a place 1/80th of the size, which certainly tends to support the contention I've been making, that if you're not careful, this bill will close a good part of the Isle of Man down for no good reason.
Peter, the Isle of Man is not known, hasn't got a reputation as a hotbed of public disorder. So you just wonder why there seems like a sledgehammer to crack a nut. You mentioned before that sufficient legislation is there anyway. So,
yes.
I mean, is this the thin end of the wedge? Why would this happen?
That I don't know. That's only where a full-blown investigation would give the answer to that. What I do say is that it is a most worrying piece of legislation insofar as freedom of expression goes. And for that reason, at the end of the month, there's going to be an evening spent about freedom of expression at one of the PAG meetings on the 31st of March. I believe there are two other speakers, and again, I've been invited to be one of the speakers about freedom of expression, because I would say that freedom of expression is going to be under sustained attack with regard to this bill. It's really very dangerous what is happening. And what is worse still is I think that even so, quite a number of members of the legislature do not appreciate what exactly this bill is going to do.
Well, I find that surprising that people within Tynwald really don't understand the implications. That in itself is worrying.
Well, as I've said, another worrying aspect about this, and this is just one of the many, and that is that when the orders are made by the Department of Health, they do not necessarily have to indicate to Tynwald, which it's difficult for it to actually to do much about it in one sense, because the orders will go through by the negative vote procedure, which means they don't do anything unless somebody brings it up. So they're rather likely to pass through unnoticed. But even then, where the orders are published, there is a discretion to not to inform Tynwald where exactly these buildings are. In other words, they can anonymise them. They don't necessarily have to tell Tynwald. So you've got the situation where elected representatives are passing law, or by default passing law, where they themselves don't necessarily even know where they're talking about. Now, I find this extremely worrying, and the fact is that when these zones are published, which the department has to put together lists and keep a record of all the zones, but they have to do it in such a way as will anonymise the buildings. And so you've got what I call semi-secret legislation, and that in itself is a very troublesome departure for the law, because once you start establishing that you don't explain in law exactly what you're talking about, then how on earth can people regulate their conduct to comply with law where they don't know where we're talking about? So there's a raft of issues there, Andy, and I do hope that they will get explored.
Okay, so it's tomorrow night in Ramsey at 7 o'clock. Whereabouts again, Peter?
Our Lady Star of the Sea Catholic Church.
Okay, all right. Thanks for calling today.
Yep, thank you. Bye-bye.
And 17 minutes past 12. Tony's on now. Tony B. Hi, Tony.
How you doing?
Very well, thanks, yeah.
Good. Yeah, good points from Peter. I think if you look at take a large step back, and what you see is, we don't want you to do something, but we're not going to tell you what it is. We're going to have control over it. And remember, it's not the government, this is a department, as Peter says. So they're going to decide what to do. You might end up in an illegal situation you didn't even know existed. And all this is driven by secrecy. And what have we just heard today? We're going to put forward, we want to charge you for FOIs. So there's another one. And it goes on and on and on.
You see,
we are turning into 1984 here.
They told us at the time, at the last election, transparency. They couldn't say transparency enough. Everything was going to be transparent. We're going to see everything. Well, they may as well have. They wanted to cover Tynwald in perspex so we could see what was going on, like a Dyson cleaner. And now, well, we don't know how much it's going to be. I mean, it may be a £5 or it could be £50.
And it shouldn't be anything. If they did what they should be doing, which is being open, honest and transparent, they wouldn't have any FOIs. There wouldn't be any need for them, would there? Because somebody could say, I'm not sure about this, what's that? And they get an answer. So if you ask for instance, in the future, where are these zones, you'll get told that we're not allowed to tell you. It's a secret. So think about it. We're heading down the road of, you do what we say, or we'll basically criminalise you, which is basically what Peter's saying, but I'm a bit more rough about it. I think this government and the departments and all the people who put forward these members' bills, all the members' bills should be removed, full stop. No arguments, no discussion, they should be stopped right now, because they're not suitable to put into law. And I think there's 3 of them, but they should all be stopped. Dr. Allenson and his idea that we should kill people, but we shouldn't change the law to suit it, and we can only do it as and when I think it should be done, and we can't do it because the UK's got different laws. So you're going to end up with a situation where the Isle of Man will be held out and pointed at in the Court of Justice in EHCR, saying you're breaking global regulations.
Which global regulation?
Well, there's a freedom of right to ask a question. There's a freedom of right to demonstrate.
Right.
So in both cases, in the Isle of Man, you're going to be in breach. How about that? Would that be a good thing for the Isle of Man?
Well, the thing is, I'm trying to get my head around this. As you say, by anonymising this, you could be breaking the law by being somewhere that you didn't know you shouldn't be in the first place.
Yeah, correct. That's what they're coming to, because that way you'll be cowed. You'll do as you're told, And that comes back down to the same thing. Oh, we should get ready for the next pandemic. No, we shouldn't get ready for the next pandemic. What we should do is watch very carefully, where did that pandemic come from? China. But have we said anything about that? No. We're just running around in circles over here telling everybody, yeah, we'll protect you. How are they going to protect us when they don't know what's coming? Think about it. I'm not being negative, Andy, but the more you see and the more you hear, the worse the situation gets, that we're losing our control over our rights because governments, and particularly departments, don't want to be questions, over difficult things. I mean, nobody's come forward and said, we've made a mistake with the boat, have they? That it's too big, that it's too deep, or whatever. Nobody's come forward and said anything. We keep spending money like water, and then all they do is complain because freedom of information costs us X amount. So they can spend hours and hours working out how much it's cost them to answer them, but they can't go ahead and just tell us what the answers are.
Just going back to Dr. Allinson's assisted dying bill then, now that's it. Everybody we talk to, it seems to split everything down the middle. So there is a substantial portion of the Isle of Man that wants that.
Right, Andy, I agree. I don't have a problem with the idea that you should have an assisted dying bill. I have a problem with us trying to take the lead on it. That's what I have the problem with.
Right.
And I'm sure Peter could elucidate on that, but it's very clear, that the person who needs to put that first stab in the ground is the UK. Because if we can't be in contravention of UK law, can we? How can we do that? So why are we rushing ahead, spending, and of course it didn't cost anything according to Alf Cannon, but of course it does because somebody spent 6 months or a year, in fact 2 years, 2.5 years, researching and trying to put this into a law that's written down. So we didn't use anybody's time for that? Of course we did. So we wasted a fortune to develop a piece of paper with writing on that is what the Isle of Man thinks before the UK has passed any legislation. Don't we think that's a cart and a horse situation where we've rushed ahead and got it wrong? I don't have a problem with somebody here saying we need an assisted dying bill. Yes, I agree. We should go to the UK and say, please get your assisted dying bill in place so we can get ours in place. We cannot be seen as world leaders. It's ridiculous. Okay. We're not a world leader. We're not a world leader in anything, and we shouldn't be a world leader in anything. Okay. We're a small 80,000 people island. But we're acting as though we're super important on the global stage, and we're not.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Tony.
I'm sorry to be negative, but somebody needs to inject a bit of common sense into all these conversations, like Peter has.
Okay, thanks for coming. Good to hear from you. It's 24 minutes past 12. Howard's on now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Just listening to Tony there saying about the organisation, the World Health Organisation are gradually shuffling themselves into a position. And bear in mind, these are not any governmental things. This is a voluntary and a homemade effort to shuffle themselves into a position where they can dictate when the next lockdown is going to be. And that will cover the world. So every man jack who believes in any form of real life, shall we say, except they get the Chinese and Russians, you don't tell them what to do, they make their own mind up. But the World Health Organization, they want to be dictatorial over the rest of the civilized world.
Isn't it funny? Everybody keeps on saying that this was a lab experiment in Wuhan and this, that and the other. Nobody sent the Chinese a bill for this, have they?
No. Do you think he'd ever get paid?
Well, you could always try, but as you say, that nobody's really put their hands up and said, well, this is what happened. And it just leads you to believe then, if the Chinese are up to it, who else is doing that?
Exactly. Well, Britain was doing it and putting down, and they've still got that island off the Scottish coast where they put the anthrax down, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And how long ago was that? They had to remove most of the soil, but even still, it's not fully habitable. And that was the British, and they were the co-inventors of the vaccine for the COVID. So this must be a well-known sort of thing within those environments, and they were able to come up with it fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So who's to say in a few years' time that something like that gets out of a British lab?
As you say, Howard, we don't know. We're just the people who walk the streets and pay the taxes. We don't know what's going on up there.
And this is exactly what I was looking at, I'll say it was on 3FM News. I don't remember seeing it on your website, but an Onken MHK is called Manxcare, a failed model. It doesn't say who it is, but a leaked email, internal leaked email. And due to our current financial situation, please do not carry out any activity on the Isle of Man patients between now and the 31st of March 2025. That is not classified as P1. I don't know what P1 is. Somebody will correct me on that.
I think that's urgent.
It's urgent, yeah, I should imagine. If you do, we will not be in a position to pay for the corresponding invoices. Now, my wife and quite a lot of other people are going up to the eye clinic in Nobles Hospital here, and it's for the age-related macular degeneration. And we used to go away on a regular basis to Aintree, and they have brought it back in-house. They used to do it here, and I went to Aintree, and then they brought it back in-house. And when we go up there on whatever day, and these appointments are set by Aintree, my wife gets a letter from Aintree saying when her appointments are, and doubtless all the other people is there. And we always see quite a few. Now, are these part of this we cannot pay? Are these people that are going up still going to be treated? Is the money there for the treatment? Because everything appertaining to the age-related macula is done under the umbrella of Aintree. Apparently the staff are employed by Manxcare, but they'll be billed to Aintree. The medicines, etc., for the vaccines, they, I think, are led to believe, come from Aintree, because and the information, if you're up there, they have to check with Aintree on what your situation is as regards your treatment. This is when you're in there. So this is just another one of the things that people are not being told about. Are they prepared to let people go blind, to put it bluntly? Because my wife, her next appointment is April. And if she doesn't get these injections, her eyesight deteriorates quite rapidly. And she's now to a point where she's going to need cataracts removed. So this treatment has got to be ongoing. And here we are. Oh, it's Julie Edds that spotted this. It was an email, that was an internal email. And she's calling for the arm's length organisation and for healthcare to be brought back under direct government control. Because I spoke to David, oh Lord, what's his name? Ashford, on your programme one day, and asked him about the GP surgeries. And he said it is a business, and the GP surgeries are run under Manxcare as a business. They're paid, and they're paid X number of pounds per patient.
Yeah, well, they're on piecework, Howard.
Well, I don't know about piecework. I don't know how many they're getting through a day, but I've been up a couple of times, not for appointments, just to drop something in, and there's only been 2 or 1 even in the waiting room. But I'm still waiting, and I'm talking about 4 months, 5 months now, for a call from a doctor to explain what new tablets he's given me. And I don't even know which doctor it is. It was a nurse that actually, in the GP surgery, a nurse that changed them with the doctor's permission, and I still haven't heard anything. One of the side effects of these tablets is a heart attack. Well, I don't want too many of them.
Regarding your wife, hopefully April, of course, is a new financial year. So it may be that everything changes after the end of this month. And, of course, yet again, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And hopefully the politicians will get their heads together tomorrow and later on this week.
When this went out, this email, it doesn't have there's a picture of what was on somebody's taken a screenshot of it. But have they had this problem, and are people suffering for the lack of treatment because of the way they said they can't pay for it?
Okay, all right.
But it'd be interesting to see what the situation is. And as a lot of people are saying, the service, not the nursing, the managerial side and the presentation side of Nobles Hospital has deteriorated rapidly since Manx Care came into being.
Okay, Howard, we appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye now. 28 minutes before 1 on 490. A message says, regarding this drainage work at Belig Bridge, which the ACU's requested, I hope they're going to pay for it and not the taxpayers. It wouldn't get done if they'd hadn't asked for it. Yet again, the TT takes priority over the rest of us. The road's flooded for years, but the DOI won't repair it. But if it affects the TT, anything can be done, says 490. I don't think it's good enough. That's my opinion. And no Google or app needed to work that one out, says 490. David's with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy. Happy St. Patrick's Day, anyway.
Thank you.
That's the main thing. Let's do something nice. At the weekend, I spoke to John, and John's had a letter from the local authority. He's been allocated a property in sheltered units, so he's going to be home or housed on Thursday. And when I had a chat to him over the weekend and stuff like that, a couple of my colleagues, one's bought him an air fryer, because you've got to remember now, Andy, if you were homeless and you're living in a house of multiple occupation, everything's there for you.
Yeah.
But when you allocated something, you're going to need a bed, you're going to need curtains, you're going to need floor coverings, you're going to need a kettle. And I know some people that I know personally have given already an air fryer and a kettle to John. I won't say where he's actually going to go, but it is in the Onken area. And I was just wondering if there is anybody out there that's got some stuff, even knives and forks. You can't believe it, can you, when you move somewhere? How are you going to eat? Or a table to sit, or chairs to sit on? That's the amazing thing, but at least it's something that's happened. And his life's going to change from Thursday.
Okay.
And he wanted me to tell you that.
Right. Well, so if anybody's got any stuff that they're willing to donate, how do we get in touch with them, or they get in touch with us?
Well, they could do two ways. I don't mind, because I'm a sure customer now, and Manx Telecom booted me out of the telephone book. My number is 627-863. It's got a machine on. So I don't want any abuse. I just want, if you can help, or stuff like that, or you want to talk about something, just ring that number, leave me a message, and I'll come back to you.
All right.
And when Thursday comes and we get him in, hopefully in the next week or two, he'll ring you up and say to the people that have helped him, thank you.
Well, the important thing is that he comes off that awful list and he becomes John with a home rather than John being homeless, because nobody wants that. That's great news, David. Thanks for calling.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Good to hear from you. So this week's marks 5 years since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Anybody arriving on the Isle of Man 5 years ago was forced to self-isolate for 14 days. One of the first cancellations to be announced was TT, of course, and the local government elections were also cancelled in that year. Do you remember the time? Well, we've been speaking to three of the main decision makers at the time, and we asked them what they would have done differently. So you'll hear the Chief Minister at the time, now retired, of course, Howard Quayle. You'll hear the guy who was Treasury Minister then, now our Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, and then the DHSC Minister, Health Minister, now Cabinet Office Minister, David Ashford.
Would have actually shut us down earlier. As we now know from Freedom of Information requests that have released the minutes, I went to Council of Ministers in the March. That's the one thing that, from my point of view, I think we should have done.
Some things we got right, some of the other things we didn't get right. The Isle of Man was second only to New Zealand from a death rate. It was incredibly low, 140 odd, far too many, but much lower than anywhere in the adjacent isle. But there were other areas that I felt we could have done better. For example, the support of residential nursing and nursing homes. That obviously was clearly shown we hadn't got it quite right. Again, the transportation with the steam packet, mistakes were made there. I'm happy to admit that we weren't perfect. We did our very, very best, but there was still room for improvement.
There was lots of vulnerable people that were impacted. We did tragically lose members of our community to the virus, and that mustn't be forgotten. One of the things COVID has done is it has left not just us, but the rest of the world as well, better positioned and better prepared should there be a similar outbreak in the future.
In some ways, actually, I feel it's helped us have a more mature approach and understanding of the value of our borders and the need to look after them and keeping ourselves alert to what is going on globally.
Whilst it was a very traumatic time, I was incredibly proud of our people, the people of the Isle of Man, and how they responded. They followed the rules. Yes, we were fairly strict if you did break the rules, but the vast majority of people followed the rules. And as a result of that, they had a significant period where the Isle of Man was the envy of the world, where we could continue with our lives. But yeah, we were lucky that, as I say, the people of the Isle of Man, our government workers, our healthcare workers, but not just them, everyone stepped up to the mark. And as a result, we came out of it much better than initially I thought we might do.
Howard Quayle, former Chief Minister, you heard the Chief Minister now, Alfred Cannon, and David Ashford, now Cabinet Office Minister. Seems weird to look back just to see what we went through, doesn't it? Do you remember those daily briefings that we had? The numbers, the briefings, the fact that you had to isolate with your family, those bubbles that were created. Strange times, eh?
Heating oil for homes, powering farms and businesses, keeping you moving with petrol stations across the island. Ellen Mannin Fuels. Call us on 844000. Are your details accurate on the electoral register? If you're aged 16 or over, registration is required and may improve your credit rating. If something has changed or you move house, you can update your details anytime. But if you want to vote in the local authority general elections in April, your information needs to be accurate before the 25th of March. Register or update your details online. It only takes a minute. Just search Electoral Register Isle of Man. For assistance, email elections@gov.im or telephone 685 754. Don't lose your vote. Register now.
To celebrate Bed Month, you could win an incredible Sealy bed worth over £1,000 at Millie Chaps of Ramsey with our Celebs in a Bed prize draw. 2 celebrities are tucked up in Millie Chaps' luxurious beds, so call in store and identify the Celebs in a Bed for your chance to win. Simply text their names and your name to 166 177, starting your message with the word bed. All correct entries will go into the prize draw live on Manx Radio at the end of the month. Call in store to enter and check out Millie Chaps' fantastic great offers across the store. Celebs in a Bed with Millie Chaps of Ramsey and your nation station, Manx Radio.
It's been a few weeks now since we talked about Ledgeco, but Oncan MHK Julie Edge has prompted agenda back to the topic as she has a motion in Tynwald calling for the role of members of the Legislative Council and the method of their election to be reformed. So what is this all about and what's provoked Ms Edge to seek such reforms? Find out an agenda this evening at 5:30 on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan. Has Julie Edge been playing politics with her questions on cancer care, and is she right to suggest UK government health reform should see an end to Manx care being independent from the health department?
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
20 to 1. Thank you for 313G. People remember COVID because the government keeps blaming today's problems on it. I get you. Eddie's on now. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Randy. I've been listening in again, similar. It's topical at the moment, isn't it? I was listening to Peter at one of his meetings, actually. Tony as well was on. It's just to pick out a word that he used in it, it's frightening. to me, this is, again, something that the government are pushing through, but the vast majority of people out here don't want. So many things that are going on in the government that the people out here don't want, and yet right from the minute go, this government say, "Oh, we're listening to you. We've had these meetings all over the place where we're trying to get to the public and listen to the public, but they don't listen." Just a few points. The subject that we're talking about there, hushing everybody. I wonder if they're anticipating that there might be riots on the Isle of Man, and it'll make it dead easy to arrest you or something, just for protesting about something. And the problem is, there's that much to protest about. I mean, the nurses, they might just be backing down a little bit on the nurses by the sound of things. But there's another thing I was looking at, which is Wales tried the 20 miles an hour. I'm just wondering if any of our MPs, or MHKs, actually do a bit of homework before they actually do something. In Wales, they tried this 20 mile an hour speed limit, didn't they? And they found out that it wasn't working, and there was so much protest against it. But I'm not sure if it was Denmark or Sweden also tried it, and they got rid of it as well.
Do you think we should have 20 mile an hour anywhere then on the Isle of Man?
Well, it's in one or two. It's obvious places, isn't it? I mean, somebody else commented on that. Put it in the obvious places, around schools, hospital, school, things like that, where there's kids about, or there's people on crutches, wheelchairs, things like that. Put it in the obvious places, but to put it en masse, I mean, you had somebody on, I think his name was Alan. He was saying one of the widest roads leading into Port Erin, they're going to have 20 miles an hour on it, and they're going to have to alter all the bus services seemingly to. But these are just one thing after another. But that 20 mile an hour thing, I think it's Denmark or Sweden, but the psychologists reckon that if you're doing such a low speed, you don't concentrate on the road as much. You start wandering around looking at scenery and playing with a radio or something like that. And they ended up with more accidents. But that's just one or two things. I mean, if Dr. whatever her name is would have done her homework, she would have found out that they're not really stupid in Wales. They're quite bright people. They decided it wasn't working, and the people didn't want it, so they got rid of it. They also found out in Wales that if you plant daffodils in soil, it works a lot better than tarmac.
What else is on your mind, Eddie?
The main thing on my mind is quite a few people in the Eristane area do the homework, and they do their own studies on things. How many days are we into the year 74? Is it 75?
Yeah.
35 of them, we've had no wind or too much wind. Have you noticed it's calm as anything? And yet, according to the weather people, this first 3 months of the year are the windiest on record.
Have they got some measuring stuff up at Eristane still?
No, they only put theirs up for I think it was 6 months, which it was supposed to be 2 or 3 years, but they've rushed everything. They've just made a mess of everything. They even had monitors up there watching the birds, and they were drilling at the same time. I think I pointed that out a few times. So they're an amateur lot, the Wardell Armstrong, absolutely amateur. But the other thing is as well, that's 35 days where we would have to have gone into this buying it from England, wouldn't we?
And that's the point. And you know what price? Yeah. Or you know what price I'm going to mention?
Exactly, yeah.
29p per kilowatt hour we pay. And if we're having to import energy from elsewhere, including at the drop of a hat, and obviously if you buy stuff at the drop of a hat, it's more expensive, what's our electricity going to cost? If they'd actually put a mark in the sand and say electricity will be no more expensive than it is now when we get these wind turbines and we have to import stuff and what have you. If they'd say that, I think a lot of people would understand that. But at the moment, it's ifs, buts, and maybes.
Well, these are the 3 windiest months of the year, usually, according to the weather people. And I haven't even put into the permutation there the fact of if one breaks down and it's offline. But if you're only getting a tiny little bit when the windiest months are going, what are you going to get the rest of the year? They're so unreliable. It's just madness. And the other thing I pointed out to you a few weeks ago is the heathland itself it's taken thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to work that perfect sponge out. Do you know, it's still trickling just that nice amount. Honestly, it's such a fantastic thing. Nobody's ever going to invent anything as good as that, are they? It's a perfect sponge to stop flooding.
Okay. All right, Eddie, we appreciate it. Thanks for calling today.
Okay, Andy.
Take care now, 13 minutes before 1. This Thursday, the 20th of March, it's the spring equinox when the whole world shares 12 hours day and 12 hours night. Well, being Manx, we're going to celebrate it a few days late, but they're doing a walk this coming Saturday, the 21st, a 3-mile pilgrimage around the parish of Michael, Kilferrick, Patrick's Chapel. They're doing the Sput Vane Waterfall in Glenwillan and walking along the beach. If you want to be there, they'd like to see you. Gather at Glenmore Beach Car Park at 11:15, and if you're going by bus, the 10:07 from Douglas via Peel will be fine. There's no charge, no need to book, just tip up there, just fetch up with a packed lunch and a drink and what have you, and enjoy it. And if you want more information, Phil and Paul are your contacts. Phil on 437248 or Paul on 421027 if you want to do that spring equinox, little bit late walk around the parish of Michael.
Quayside Tyre and Service Centre is now an agent for Motability vehicles. So when you need tyres for your Motability car, call into Quayside and they'll be happy to assist with excellent friendly service and great prices. Find all the latest offers on Facebook. Call into Quayside or call 664417.
South Quay Douglas, don't delay, have safer tyres today. Quayside. They've got your whole house in their hands.
When you need scaffolding,
DPM.
On time and on budget,
DPM.
We'll beat any quote.
DPM. We do it all at DPM.
DPM promise to beat any like-for-like scaffolding quote by 10%. So when you need scaffolding, call the friendly, experienced DPM scaffolding team on 612000. T's and C's apply.
We do it all at DPM.
As our loved ones age, they carry not only the memories of the past, but also the uncertainties of the future. Secure tomorrow today with Man Benham's guidance on enduring powers of attorney and more.
Bright headlights on the road can hold you back. Holmes & Davidson Opticians present an advanced solution, our cutting-edge road lens coating. Significantly reducing glare, clarity is enhanced, driving confidence elevated. Experience safer and more confident vision. Trust Holmes & Davidson Opticians to keep you safer on the roads. Book your consultation today at holmesanddavidsonopticians.co.uk or call 676 230.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Tomorrow, Rob Cowell's going to be on. Rob is chair of Ramsey Commissioners. And we've heard about the Local Government Authorities Amendment Bill and the local authorities' functions being affected by that, whereby the government can just dip in and take some things over. So we'll hear what the chair of Ramsey Commissioners has to say tomorrow. And also he's a member of the Northern District Civic Community Site Joint Committee. So we'll hear what's happened to that as well, because the DOI is supposed to be taking over the Northern Amenity Site. And the reform of rates updates as well. So Rob Cowell speak to the Ramsey Commissioners Chairman tomorrow on Mannin Line. David didn't mention, says 907, it's his birthday today. Happy birthday, David. Wish him happy birthday. And we haven't heard much, have we, from Wardell Armstrong or from Orsted, really, about what's happening with the wind turbines. We do ask, by the way, lots of people say what's going on. The news team do often put in requests for information from the people, and as soon as we know, we'll tell you. Jenny dropped a note in just to say Chris Robertshaw, who was on Mannin Line recently, retired MHK, Minister, of course, Minister of Policy and Reform, is doing a presentation at the Legion tonight in Douglas. What's wrong with our government? 7:30 to 9. So you can go and see him there. 4 young guys visited the Isle of Man from the UK and were quite positive for the most part. This is Gary dropped a note in. There's a YouTube called tpd.tv. They made a couple of observations. Manx people were negative about the Isle of Man and some businesses were closed. The bit where they thought the smaller water wheel was Lady Isabella was amusing as well. Thank you, Gary. We'll look for that on YouTube. And a note in regarding... it's a WhatsApp. Thank you for that WhatsApp. Remember, there's a lot more wind at higher levels, hence the wind turbines are extremely big, says John in Ramsey. So it may not be breezy on the ground floor, but it is breezy if you go really high up. Thanks also to... this is, 841. How many times have I heard on Mannin Line that the Isle of Man's not part of the UK? So why should we wait for UK legislation on assisted dying? Surely we're able to decide this on our own. Well, plainly, the Treasury Minister, Dr. Allinson, does, because that's his private member's bill. Text, email, call and WhatsApp, and lots of first. There was another one just saying, I went to Specsavers on Monday the 4th of November 2024. The optician told me I had cataracts in both eyes. She referred me to the hospital. I've been on the waiting list and been told the waiting list for the eye clinic at the hospital is 3 years. Terry, drop that in, Terry 469. Is that true? The eye clinic at Nobles is a 3-year wait. Heavens, if anybody's got any follow-up on that, I'd like to know. Regarding Howard's wife, this is Andy, if she's having treatment for macular degeneration, cataract surgery is completely different, and that wouldn't correct damage done to the retina by wet or dry age-related degeneration. We wish her well for her returning sight, says Andy. The World Health Organization aren't going to be able to force lockdowns. That's conspiracy, says 653. They won't be doing that. Well, they can recommend it, can't they? But then again, not many people took notice of some of the things that the World Health Organization did. And Eric said, Tony's wrong. We are a leader in some things. We're a world leader in road racing. We are a pioneering island. Well done, Eric. Thanks for that. 110. And I'm trying to think how long it's going to be. Is it 10 weeks today? I think it's, 10 weeks today. It'll be Monday the 26th of May, which will be day 1 of qualifying. Can't wait. Clocks go forward. Week on Sunday the 30th of March. And 5 weeks today is Easter Monday. We're getting there, aren't we? And a message in just regarding the Laxey wheel, which CC says doesn't even work at the moment. Probably the reason for that flooding. Why don't we make power from the Lady Isabella? But no, nothing. Well, onlookers, when they see the Laxey wheel, are amazed the fact we don't have at least a dynamo or a generator on the world's largest working water wheel. Why did nobody ever think that will be a good idea? Why did somebody from infrastructure not speak to somebody at Manx National Heritage and just say, can we put a box on the side? 775. It would be very impressive, wouldn't it? Can you imagine the sight of Lady Isabella? Oh, just regarding a follow-up on last week, says Ian, the rescue helicopter sounds like a waste of money. If they paid the air traffic controllers to be on call, they could use the fixed-wing plane, and that would be way cheaper. And regarding the nurses' home development, it was a £10 million scheme funded by government. Has it gone over budget? It says 223. I've heard it's gone 2 million over budget and won't be finished until next year. So how much is it going to cost the taxpayers, in the end? Well, I don't know whether you live or drive around Westmoreland Road, but I mean, the old nurses' home, it looks very, very impressive. It's a lot bigger and taller than it used to be, and there is going to be retail facilities in there, and I think a cafe as well. So we'll see. At the moment, we don't know when the first people are going to be moving into the old nurses' home, but we watch and wait. Try and collect punitive rates from off-island property owners. On-island people can't get bank loans to buy and renovate derelict buildings. So how are we going to break that circle? This was talking last week in a follow-up when we were talking, Rob Callister, MHK, was in, talking about derelict buildings and how we should be levying punitive rates on people who let buildings get derelict. And as Gaz says, some of them are off-island. So how do you do that? Well, that was suggested later on last week, Gaz, and it was, if people are running up rates bills from off the island, punitive rates bills on derelict buildings, surely there would come a time, maybe 5 years, maybe 3 years, when you say enough is enough, and then you compulsorily purchase it. Surely that would focus their minds. But there are many derelict buildings on the Isle of Man that will benefit from some tender love and care. Thank you, Desmond. Why do we need instruments to measure the wind when we know they're going to be there anyway? And thanks to the person who sent me the old MEA pamphlet about when they were going to put wind turbines at Snuff the Wind. They'd done wind measurements then. Snuff the Wind. Well, that's it. Rob Cowell, Chairman of Ramsey Commissioners, on tomorrow. Thanks to Chris on the phones today. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
WINT